Hi, hello YouTube. I'm Here I am with my shitty camera making a video. Hopefully no one will see. So yes, this is going to be a review of William S Burroughs' book Junky. William S Burroughs is probably most famous for writing The Naked Lunch, which is a sort of beatnik stream of consciousness. I haven't actually read The Naked Lunch, but I wanted to give my thoughts on Junky. He also famously shot his wife while he was in Mexico, trying to shoot an apple off her head and missed. And luckily, well, he wasn't arrested for manslaughter, but that's a whole other thing. So essentially, the book is about how somebody could get hooked on heroin, and his life while he was on heroin for the years he was using. And I guess one of the big messages or explanations or reasons he gives for how he got hooked on junk was simply because there was nothing else in his life, and he gives a very interesting description of the first. It was actually morphine. He started using morphine at the beginning while he was in New York, and he described it as being in this tranquil, warm bath, and he gives like a very colourful description of trying to get morphine over the counter from these corrupt doctors called croakers. There's a whole index at the back of the book with all the vernacular, with all the 1950s slang, which is amusing in and of itself. If you like Orwell's Down and Out in Paris and London, it's very famous, then you'll probably like Junky. It's the same sort of style, you know, the life of a societal outcast with very little money, just scraping by, and they're living in squalor. But it is sort of just one thing after another. There's not much. It's not very personal. It's very strangely, his writing, the way he writes is very detached. But it also gives a very interesting description of the grimier parts of New York in the 1950s. Bear with me. I wrote some notes down. And then he repeatedly with his sort of junkie buddies, they keep on ending up getting arrested for one thing or another, and having to go to these very gruesome rehab clinics. And there's a lot of interesting backstory to that. I particularly liked the stories about them robbing drunkards. It was a whole thing. They were called the drunks you would rob when they passed out in the subway or on the streets were called lushers. That was the slang, and that's how some of the junkies would make their living. And there was all these other little things, and so they goes to Mexico to try to quit, and he doesn't quit, and he ends up getting hooked back on junk. And it's very strange because he has a wife this whole time that's barely ever mentioned, and he was definitely bisexual, if not gay. And there's a couple of stories about going to gay bars, and then his description of trying to get off drunk, and he becomes drunk, and he nearly dies. So if you like that sort of very gonzo travel writing style, then you'll probably find Junky very interesting. It's a very easy read. it's very engaging without being too. I mean, it is a book about heroin addicts, but it really isn't that emotionally charged. It's like I said, his writing style is very detached, and it's not quite stream of consciousness like the other beatnik writers like Jack Kerouac and On the Road. I think it's far more structured, but nothing really happens. You know, it's just his day-to-day life on heroin, and then in the end, well, it's not really spoilers. I mean, nothing really happens, but I do want to read The Naked Lunch, and obviously there's the film by Cronenberg that no one thought could be directed because it's such a surreal book.